Have you ever struggled to add overlap and follow through to an animation? Maybe you tried, offsetting a tail, a spine, an arm, and it just looked bad. Not at all what you expected. Or maybe you just weren't even sure, what to even overlap or why. Well, in day two of this 28-day animation challenge, we'll be animating a squirrel hopping across the screen to get a much stronger handle on overlap and follow through. And stick around until the end to discover how this animation is teaching you a secret hack that will help you animate like a pro in demo shots. Let's hop in. Right, so starting this one off, we're going to start a little bit differently. I'm going to go into SingSketch here, it's just a program that you can use for free to draw over animation, but also plan out your animation. I made a little whiteboard here, and we're gonna animate this squirrel, right? So we want to get clear on exactly what we need. I'm gonna try to keep this probably smaller than it's gonna be inside of Maya, but the idea is that this squirrel, we got a ball here. It's going to jump into frame. I'm gonna have some sort of ground. I don't think I want it to jump very, very high. So we're going to try to keep those minimal. So we got a ball here. Let me go ahead of frame actually. Ball kind of starts here, kind of coming into frame this way, I think. And then I'm going to go ahead, just a couple frames. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's have that ball kind of down here on the ground. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead, we're just going to have it take a couple of bounces, I think, and then exit frame. We'll probably exit frame pretty quickly. So I think just like maybe 3 or 4 bounces and it's gone. Maybe that last 4th bounce, it's like leaving frame. Just to keep it simple, not do too much animation. And that way we can really practice our overlap with this one and animate that tail, which is going to be this part of the character that is a lot more flexible. 3, 4. We go in and put another bounce in. I'm going to make this one shorter in terms of height. 2, 3, 4. So here, I'm just planning out my animation. I'm just thinking about what do I want to do. I'm going through this thinking about how many bounces there's going to be, where the action's going to go. And what I'm starting out here doing in my planning is adding what you would call a key pose. Like we get a sense that there is a ball bounce here because we got the highest point and we got the lowest point, highest point, lowest point. So I'm going through and kind of roughing out the idea of the shot. Right? So that's what you would call a key pose. Like without it, it's just not clear that there is even a ball bounce here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, find another, maybe even shorter bounce. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it comes back down to the ground. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe we have another tall bounce as it leaves. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's gone somewhere over here. Okay. So that kind of roughs out our idea, and we can kind of flip through it here as if it's, part of a drawing. And we're just going to keep in mind that it's kind of disappearing here and there's a ground. Now this isn't like a great 2D animation software, so I can't easily make like a background or everything, but this gives us the idea. Okay, so we got like the key poses of what's going to happen through there. Remembering what we did for the vertical ball bounce, we want to give these bounces a sense of weight. So we want to favor this eye position, right? So we're going to go, say, about halfway through here. And we're going to really make sure that this ball is higher up than it is down. Maybe we push it even more. Maybe it's something like that. Okay. And then maybe here, you know, it's coming down finally. Actually, why don't we go ahead and make that a stretch frame? And then here, we're gonna squash it. Okay, so we're gonna make it shorter, wider. And then here, as we're leaving, right, we're gonna stretch on the way out. And then I wanna go through and really make sure that each of these bounces are favoring the top with the breakdown. So this is a breakdown key where it's halfway in between our two key poses. So you got a key pose here, key pose there, and then there's a breakdown there. Okay, so it's telling us, that breakdown is telling us how we get between our key poses, how we get through that move. And because we're favoring the top, it tells us a lot about the weight of this ball, right? The other thing we're doing here, and I'm doing it automatically, we haven't really called it out yet with the first challenge. We're creating arcs. That is a principle of animation. Most things tend to move in arcs. They may not be perfect arcs, but in real life, most things move in arcs. I'd say that's a lot to do with gravity, the spin of the earth, and everything. And in animation, if you don't have a clear arc as something is moving, it tends to look more robotic or just very hard for our eyes to track it. Because really only robots can move in a perfect straight line and separate their joints to do so. So we want to have arcs throughout this ball bounce. And this is the first part of our squirrel, right? We're pretending that this squirrel is kind of boing, 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 going through the scene, maybe going after some kind of acorn. And then here at the end, we're going to have another breakdown. It's coming up to the top very quickly. One more breakdown halfway through there, giving us our ball bounce. Boing, boing, boing. Right, so we're almost 2D animating this thing all out here. We're playing around with how much time we have. We're pushing our timing and spacing, all that good stuff. And we're just focusing on this ball bounce first. This is like the body of the squirrel, right? If we don't have the body of the squirrel doing the right thing, it's going to be very hard for the tail to flow correctly because we don't know where the body's going, right? We haven't figured it out yet. So it's good to get really clear on that ball bounce first and get as much life as we can out of it, make it really feel like an energetic squirrel. And here, you know, with these squashes and stretches, I'm going to be a lot more precise in 3D, especially since I'm not trying to make a 2D animation here. I'm just trying to like get an idea of what I'm after. So you don't have to be perfect with this stuff. It's just trying to wrap your head around it, right? So we have freedom to change all this. But anyway, we've got a rough kind of path here for our ball part of the squirrel, the body part of the squirrel. Especially with these frames here, you know, it's going to be hard to be super precise. But yeah, we've got that bouncing. So let's talk about what we're going to do. Or first, let me clarify for you in case it's not clear. We're doing about a bounce every 4 frames. That's kind of like the tempo we've given this. We haven't varied it up just for simplicity's sake. So we're starting here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 4 frames our ball bounce completes. And then we've worked out our arcs. We worked out that the arcs change a little bit. They go from big to smaller, and then from big again to just to vary it. So we're pretending those characters are alive and can control those bounces, add the energy to it. And then at the same time, we're also figuring out our spacing. So, you know, we're favoring things. And what am I drawing here? I'm just, these ticks are our spacing. So this is like our frame 1. This is gonna be our frame 3 or so, right? Yeah, I think that's like 3. And then we're down here, right? And so on and so on. So we're figuring out our spacing. We're figuring out how much ground the ball is going to cover as it goes through these bounces. Taking this time up front is going to save us so much agony or questioning, confusion, just time debating what we're doing when we actually animate this inside of Maya, or for you, maybe it's another program. What do we do about the tail? That said, well, the bounces aren't very tall. We want it to flow. We don't want it to be too distracting. We're gonna keep it simple, and we're gonna build in these tail shapes into our poses, and we're gonna build in that drag, that separation, that the body is jumping and kind of doing first, leading the motion, and that tail is following behind it. Okay, and we're gonna build that in there with shapes. So we're gonna keep it very simple. We're gonna, here, I don't really have room to show it, but the tail's like dragging behind, and then by this frame, we're gonna have the tail like so. And then here, as it's falling, maybe we'll bring it down like this, it's dragging, right? And then as it lands, that base of that tail is gonna go down, start to go down. And the tip of the tail is kind of still up towards the top, okay? So you can kind of feel it folding down, but it's taking its time compared to the ball. And then as the ball is taking off, we're gonna keep it down on the ground. As it's taking off here, I'm gonna drag it like this. So it's still, the ball is taking off, the tail is coming down to the ground. Because like the tail just reaches the ground as the ball is leaving. Then as it's kind of coming up here to its highest point, tail is still behind. Okay. So this doesn't make sense yet, that's okay. We're going to talk about what's going on here a little bit more after I kind of map this out. So as the ball reaches its highest point, the tail is still coming up. Tail still coming up as the ball is going down. And we don't have a ton of extra keys here, but we can infer that the tail is still going to be behind. Maybe it's down, like so. And then definitely as it's taking off, so somewhere in here, let's go ahead and put in some kind of stretch frame. Not a big one. It won't need a big one in Maya. And then as this is lifting here, you see, because the tail is, or the jumps are shorter here in the middle, so it's kind of changing what the tail is doing, how the tail is reacting. So I'm going to go here and just kind of drag that back. It's still down as the ball comes up. And going ahead, finally that tail is really kind of rising up to the highest point here in the middle. And then it's going to go past a little bit. Then here, it can start to come down. As we leave again. That, right, the tail is still down. Now it's off the ground. I'm still dragging behind. Then it's up. Then as the ball starts to fall, that tail is again up. And then rinse and repeat, right? But again, that's a taller bounce. So maybe you've noticed as I've been kind of ghosting this where you can see all of the frames. This is what we got, right? Nothing super fancy, but I don't think the tail is very distracting. Even though our animation is very rough here, I think it's a good test of just, you know, keeping the tail not distracting, keeping it flowing, and really working out all of our thought process here of what we're gonna do. So with that, you know, we've kind of planned out what we need to do, and we get the concept. The concept's gonna work, right? How is this working? What are we really doing here? How is this being pulled off? If it's been unclear, well, when I ghost this, as I said, maybe I gave some of that away, but the tail is following its own arc, and it's very similar to the ball because it's attached to it, but it's essentially following its own arc, and it's a wave. Okay, now that wave is taller when ball is having taller bounces, and then it gets shorter when the ball is shorter. Now we could get it to where it's only doing this. It's a very like mild ripple, right? And that would look very, very fast. That might be what you're doing if you're having the ball kind of sprint, right? It's like bing, 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 pew, instead of boing, 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 you know? That's what you would be after with the tail. If the tail were to, you know, if you had this and then the tail was going like this, it would be very intense. It would be very hard to watch this, almost kind of flashing, and we wouldn't understand what's happening. It wouldn't be clear to the audience. That clarity is in animation what you call staging. So not only presenting the idea clearly, but then making it clear enough for us to watch the whole action throughout the shot. What else are we doing here that's an animation principle? We're doing two different workflows. So we started with the ball, right? And oops, we started with the ball, and if I go back here, we started with this, and then we mapped out the whole bounces for that, right? And we did it by putting in first those key poses. So we put the highs and lows everywhere. And then we went in and we put the breakdown keys, right? To all these bounces. This process is what you would do while you're animating. And this process is called pose to pose. You're putting in all the key moments first so that you know where you're headed throughout the whole shot. It's not a mystery. You're not wondering, right? You're kind of figuring out the main beats of the shot. How fast someone walks, how many bounces there's going to be, how big do those bounces need to be to get off screen, right? You're figuring all that in a pose-to-pose workflow. That is a principle of animation. Another workflow is what we did with the tail. You watched me just kind of dive in because the ball was already there, and I went from one frame to the next, putting in that tail. That's what's called straight ahead, where you just dive in and kind of go with the flow of the action and make adjustments on the fly. That's a very intuitive process, but if you're not clear on where you're headed, like, you can easily end up you know, with a tail that's kind of too much or too little, or not anywhere near as dragging. overlappy as you want it to be. Okay, so that is another thing you just learned here in the simple planning process. The third big thing you just uncovered here is how we were overlapping this. So we were building in the overlap with poses, right? We had here, delete that one. Here we have at the top of every wave. Actually, I should just leave that. I'll go ahead and re-put that back in. Let me just put that back in. At the top of every wave, right? Every wave here, we have this shape like that. Okay? And it changes only slightly kind of as it goes over the top of that wave. So every time we're there, that's the kind of shape we're getting, right? And then every time we're kind of at the bottom, we're getting this. Okay? That is basically mirrored images of the same shape, right? It's like a C shape and a reverse C. Okay? How we transition from one to the next, when we had those breakdown keys where we're transitioning from one key pose to the next, like this one, it's the base of the tail is getting closer to this shape sooner, and then the bottom of the tail is closer to this shape where it came from. And that's kind of giving you the S shape. Okay? So it's kind of like, I put them both side by side. Like that. Okay? So that's how you transition. We're building in overlap into the poses because we're telling it by having this kind of shape here, we're defining that this base of the tail starts to go up and into this one sooner. Okay, so it goes there earlier, and this part kind of hangs back. It kind of stays where it was. That is overlay, right? And now once everything kind of gets there, it needs to finish that motion. It's got energy of like that the base of the tail had dragged, and then once it lifts up to the top, it has to follow through. So it has to continue coming up and then back down, right? It has to go with the rest of the flow. So it eventually has to lift and then kind of hang and then drip back down, and you start the whole process again. But we're building in the overlap in the shape. We're following this wave. And the whole thing to look out for is that the tip of the tail follows on this clean arc. That makes it easier to watch, okay? It gets even better if you have your spacing just like a ball bounce to where it's towards the top here and towards the bottom where that tail really favors being here, 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 where it's hanging low for a while. And then as it comes up, it kind of zips up to the top, just like that ball does. That's how we can get very smooth movement in that tail. It'll feel like it has some hang time, and then it zips down, and then zips up, right? And if it follows on this arc, it'll be very, very fluid. So we're gonna do the same thing inside of Maya. Really quick, it's gonna be doubling down on, we already really covered everything you need to learn here. And did it in a rough 2D animation format. But now we're going to dive into Maya. You can see how we take that concept and just bring it to life on the character.
Since our planning was some rough 2D animation that we can use as a decent guide here for the bounces and the tail, you know, our timing will change. Some of the size of the bounces may get adjusted, but for the most part, it's a pretty good guide. And so we brought that into I brought that into Maya here. And kind of roughly brought the reference to the size of the ball. And we can kind of quickly block out this ball that's going to hop in and then hop out of frame. So I'm going to start just with the main controller here. set a key on frame 1 and go to all the high and low points. So we're working still very much in a pose-to-pose manner. So key poses first. This process should go pretty quickly because we did a good job planning it out. So the animation should be a lot faster to pull off inside of Maya. Of course, if you're 2D animating, that's maybe the planning phase that we showed off was, you know, like your refining pass where it's like almost done already, because you maybe went a little bit more detailed. You're used to just drawing that stuff out for everything. So low point, high point, and I'm adjusting where the ground is here so that it's like, because this is our camera view. Like I want to see the ball kind of hit the ground here. I don't want to go out of camera view, even though our reference is. I'm looking at the timing here. It's a little bit off there. We didn't account for that timing being equal in terms of both sides of the bounce. And then he's going off frame after this swirl. So I'm gonna just pop out here and go to the left camera view to kind of work on that. And maybe we can make him kind of go a little bit quicker here, trying to keep the distance the same from like the start of the jump to the landing. We'll just make this a bit bigger, a bit faster than the other ones. You'll feel a little bit maybe zippier at the end because of that. We might give ourselves a couple more frames there. Boing. But he's just trying to get him off frame without adding another bounce or something. So he's going to be quick there. Okay. So now we've already got a rough, really rough setup for our ball bounces. We are going to adjust the timing, which is going to throw off that tail animation that we planned out. But that doesn't make your reference worthless. You can still follow it, and you can make it easy for yourself if you grab the reference and you actually animate it. So you animate the image sequence to be at the same timing that your animation is, and then it's continuing to be a good guide for you. I'm not going to worry about that here. I'm going to show you another tool you can use in Maya to even just plan your shot out here or to handle any overlap. But we'll get to that in a minute. So we do want to have a stretch frame where the ball is already on the floor here for like by where frame 4 is, because it's stretch for contact and then squash and then it's off. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy frame 4 to frame 3, and I'm gonna give some extra time there because that made that bounce really, really fast if we have that. Okay. And then similar deal here for the other bounces. I'm just going to add a frame into those landings. So go into the next landing, copy that to 216, and then add a frame. And I'm just going to turn off the reference for now because it's probably going to get distracting. And then same deal, copy the frame, and maybe we'll do the same deal there. Take off. Okay. So we almost like doubled the frames there, but we're gonna need them, at least for the style that we're going for here. And then before I add squash and stretch, we probably go in and start adding some of the rotation on there. But yeah, we'll do that. We'll use auto tangent to get some of our in-betweens here to favor the high point for some weight on the ball. I'm gonna go ahead though and then get some rotation in here for the drag. You can see it doesn't have the same keys on there, obviously, because we only put it on the main control. Animbot's kind of handy for this. I use this pretty frequently to copy keys. So if the main controller has a bunch of keys and the other stuff has nothing, just go select everything and then go hit this button. Boom. Now it has keys. All right. You can do it manually if you select everything and then just kind of go to every keyframe and hit S, but it just saves you some time. Boom, boom. He's a little bit too low for my camera also, so I'm just gonna bump him up to like where 0 is on the graph editor. Maybe bump these up a little bit. Boom, boom, boom. This left camera view. We'll continue working in there and then occasionally check the main camera. I have the curves turned off for it. So we're working pose to pose on this ball, trying to get the ball solid before we even worry about the tail. And go ahead and hit save for now. The rotation. The rotation. So imagining the ball is falling, and it's kind of reaching its high point. I'm saying that the ball rotation hasn't caught up with the high point yet. It's overlapping. Okay, it's dragging, and then as he continues, he's gonna kind of keep coming out like this. So for the landing, he's probably gonna be leaned back. Then he'll start to come down, and then he will, you know, drag on the way up here. And I might as well go ahead and have the start of this kind of takeoff in there. So I just hit tween to kind of have it go equally ahead. And then I'm going to favor it going up quicker. I'll put this a little bit higher because it was quite a small bounce. Okay. And then same deal here. Boom, go ahead and put that, bumping that up a little bit. And let's make sure we keep putting in that rotation. Lean. A little bit of drag on the high points. Drag back on that stretch contact coming down. And then the take off here, which we put on the wrong frame. I'll just copy that to frame 12 then. And delete this guy. Whoops. Okay, so take off again here. And for the bigger bounces, we do want to have like more drag than the other ones. This is something we can play with. Boing, boing. Okay, so kind of minimal, probably hard for you to really see it at this point with the playback. But let's go ahead and add the stretch now. So like, I'm gonna grab this controller here. And then I'm gonna get squash and stretch in there. Boing, boing. And then I'll come back and use stretch here for this controller. On the takeoff, because it's kind of dragging from down on the bottom rather than dragging from the top as it falls. Okay, and then we'll just kind of rinse and repeat. Again, we'll want to tone it down on the smaller bounces. You can see this kind of rotates the ball and that moves the tail. And these controllers are better for this rather than using, you know, this, because the pivot point is moving the base of the squirrel, moving the ball from the base. We don't want that. Probably rock him forward. And then, yeah, we'll go ahead and do this now. Okay, he's back to normal at the highest point. So we're getting a lot of the ball roughed in. Pretty good here. Just kind of dragging back from where the ball was and hoping some of this rotation the ball has with this quash and stretch, so it kind of goes with the way it's overlapping and the direction, the path of action. Okay, and we may not need to add anything else beyond here because remember the ball's going off frame. Boing, boing, boing. Okay. The other thing we're really feeling right now is the ball is like stuck when it hits the ground. It's like, rather than boing, 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 like we want him to feel like he's constantly going. And the idea here is that we're pretending like he's got legs. The ball is basically our hips and body of the squirrel with legs, right? Because it's just a ball on a tail. So you could have it land like this and have it stick in place, but we're gonna have it like almost like slide forward to give the impression that he's using legs to kind of land, cushion himself, and push off of. So I'm gonna come in here and you see how, like, well, let me auto tangent this. Okay, so you see how here it flattens out, that means it's stopping, right? And here in the beginning too, that could be an issue for us because we're kind of we want him to come in as if he's been bouncing all along, right? He hasn't just gone from a standstill to bouncing. So we don't want the speed to start slow and then pick up speed. That's what this curve is showing us. We want it to come in fast, right? So it doesn't have this ease out. It's just coming in at speed. And here we can get rid of that contact keyframe for the speed left and right, because we want the squirrel to stay kind of moving right along, right? Now, one of the ways that you can go and speed this up, if you're going to go and repeat this and kind of delete these to kind of maintain that speed, and then at the end as well, is to just come in here and make this linear. Okay, so that gives us more of a straight line. This is a bit there's some of these where he's a little faster and slower, and you can keep that if you want. We're just trying to keep it simple, right? With this part of the challenge. And now we've got the translate Z that's in auto tangent, but nothing else is. So I'm gonna go ahead at this point and swap everything over to auto. So we've kind of put in the essentials that we need. Let me go ahead and grab everything and then just hit auto tangent. And that's, again, move this a bit. We can put it back in linear. You can leave it in auto tangent. It's going to be minor differences in terms of the speed through here. And now we can see how it looks. Boing, 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 boing. So now he feels a lot more consistent going ahead, because he's actually like sliding through, like he's going forward through here rather than just staying stuck in place. Right, so it feels a lot more progressive, a lot more energetic. Now we do see that the bounces themselves are pretty floaty on like coming into this landing, right? That spacing is very even. So what we'll do now that we got the auto tangent is we're gonna come in here and get rid of these curves that really ease in and ease out very floatily with a lot of time in the middle. And we're gonna favor the high point a lot so that the ball has some weight. The squirrel has some weight as he comes in and lands, okay? So you can see how he hangs up towards the top a lot now and then drops quickly. That should be one of the things you picked up from our day one challenge with the vertical ball. And then Similarly here, we've got the takeoff stretch frame. We do want it to come up quick. I don't know if we're gonna have it go that high. It's one of the things we can play around with, but I will add that extra frame in there to really control it. Same deal over here. And then we probably, let me back up actually. We probably want to add another frame in there because we got some extra time over here. Okay, so I just kind of slid everything with a hotkey on the timeline over 1. Get the right thing here. Okay. Boom. Bring this up. And now we've got pretty nice parabolas in the graph editor, which is going to translate to weight here. Same deal for these other small bounces. All the other bounces, really. Boing, boing, boing. Boing, boing. Okay, and here, coming up, and then coming down. Again, we're going to give ourselves a couple extra frames. So just an extra frame for this landing bounce. So that our timings look up. So like it's a little bit longer here, and that's because there's an extra frame. So just keep your eye on your timing. Slide that over 1. Should be good. I don't think that messed anything up. Keep grabbing something else when I do that marquee select. Okay, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. That should feel a lot better to you, right? In terms of those bounces. In terms of the weight, the energy, I think it's still there. He still feels like a happy, like super excited squirrel. Kind of like Scrat, right? Now the fun part is really going in and adding that tail overlap. Now you could go reanimate your reference so to kind of keep it as a guide here. It's only like a couple of frames off too, so you could kind of keep it the way it is, and it's probably good enough. I'm just going to show you another way to do this with this draw tool. So this is blue pencil, but Maya has built in here also a grease pencil that lets you scribble on screen. And then you can use that as a guide to map out the tail if that's ever an issue. So I'm going to do that real quick based off of our plan.
By the way, if you're very serious about becoming a professional animator so that you can work in movies or games, you should unlock Pro Mode if you haven't already. You're going to get harder challenges that build upon the ones that you're learning here, but they're exclusively to people that have unlocked it through email. It's free, so you don't really have anything to lose. Just go to unlockpromode.com.
All right, so really quickly, I'm actually going to swap the view and do this on this side. And I can hide the controllers, and I'm just going to draw in some rough. That's probably a little too thick. Grease Pencil has similar options, and if you're using another software, you probably have similar options in terms of how this works. It's going to put a keyframe down for you, and you can scribble. And I do have a Cintiq, but I'm just going to use this tablet to show you that, you know, it's just a guide, so we can rough this out. And we're going to be going straight ahead here now with this workflow, because it's just the tail overlap. When you're doing just overlap like this, just something that's kind of following the main motion, Could probably delete this one, move this down a little closer. Let's have some ghosting as well. Yes, that makes it a lot easier, right? You don't have to just imagine where your drawing was, so you can kind of get that arc where it needs to be. Something like this. And and then here, the base of the tail is always a little bit behind that ball, and the base of the tail is driving what this tail is going to do. Okay. And so here too, we don't want the tail to come up immediately as the ball does, because it's overlapping, it's dragging behind. Nothing happens at the same time, right? Everything is broken up in real movement, real life movement. So we can kind of have it take time to kind of lift there. And I'm going to go through the whole shot, kind of mapping this stuff out. So I'll kind of speed this along for you. So there we have kind of the rough tail animation that we need, a good guide for us, and we can even hit play and kind of see if it's working or if it's too busy or overlapping in weird spots, hitting walls, right? And you can really see the flexibility in that compared to the tail that we haven't animated on the ball, right? So pretty handy part of like workflow for something that's really, really flexible or needs to hit some extreme shapes and then do it quickly, right? The ball is very fast. It's very easy for this tail to become too stiff or just get too busy in terms of how far it moves in just a couple frames. So now we're just gonna match the tail controls to it to make it the same as our drawings, really. So I'm gonna show the controls now. I can even probably just get rid of the draw tools and I'll hit save real quick. Let's do some shaping here. Stamp a key here, stamp a key there, go to probably all the highs and lows. Or you get straight ahead it. I mean, you got the guide, doesn't really matter what you dive into first, whatever makes the most sense to you. And we're gonna try to batch something similar. Now it's gonna have to change a little bit because the size of the tail is different from our drawing. That's where being a 2D animator would make it a little easier. You'd probably be more on model. Solid drawing skill would be a little bit better in terms of keeping proportion with your character. Yeah, most of this is going to be pretty straight ahead and kind of jumping around and just make sure that want the tip of the tail to maintain its arc. We don't want the tip of the tail to, swing too far this way or that way. That's one of the main things. And then the other is to really make it feel like it's always dragging behind the ball. The ball motion's starting to go up, so the tail is down. And we want it to feel like the base of the tail, since it's the closest to the ball, is what's pulling the tail up and having it make all of its turns and changes. Boop. Right. Okay. So it's starting to get there. Just Still pretty long. He's not traveling too far to the screen right for how long this tail is, so might have to do a little bit of finagling there to keep it arcing nicely. Try to bend that down, this back up. I'm just watching that tail tip there, seeing if that gives us a bit of a better curve. And then here on the way down, I'm gonna go ahead and put this extreme in. This is pretty fun stuff because it's pretty fluid. You know, the straight ahead, just kind of going with your gut, trying to get a nice flow to the tail. It's pretty fun. As long as you have a workflow for handling it, right? And you know what you're after. Otherwise, it can be pretty stressful. And it can take you a long time, right? Especially when you're, if you didn't jump in with 2D first, it's a lot more cumbersome to manage, and at least in 3D, all of these tail controllers to try to get shape than it is to just draw a line, right? It takes so much longer. So that's why I really like this kind of like 2D approach. If you're not sure what you're after, you're trying to get like a certain feeling to it, right? You want a certain amount of intensity, or you want it to be calm, right? Whatever it is for your shot. It's great to work out in 2D first for speed if you're not sure. Quick tests can save you a ton of time. Hopefully that rambling is good information for you. It's kind of popping in my head as I'm doing this subconsciously. So you can see here the tail gets a bit clunky because we didn't work on every single frame through there. And it's turning some tight corners. It's because the tail is so fast through these. Oh yeah, we also need to, I think it's part of it in stepped. Okay. So that's a little better. You'll still see the tail coming out of the arc here. So, because the tail is going very quickly, and sometimes the ball isn't doing a whole lot in terms of spacing distance, the tail can get kind of clunky through there, right, through these moments. So it does really come down to keying like every single frame to get it fluid for how quick this is. Oh, somehow the tip of the tail didn't get keyed. That's my bad. We will work that out. Okay, so backing up here and this landing. Bring that up, rotate this. There, bam. And then takeoff. Not a lot of time between landing and takeoff, so gotta make sure you keep that tail down. Try to connect it to where it used to be. And you can still see where we're just like our planning, we're getting this C shape at the top, C shape at the bottom, and we're getting the kind of the S curves here in the middle, right? Where it's the base of the tail is lifting up here to kind of curl like a C shape at the top, and then the bottom is curling backwards with the C shape at the bottom. So we're getting that S shape right in the middle. Just thinking about overlap in terms of shapes and animating it that way just gives you such a fluid result for something like this that you wouldn't be able to get with offsetting. That's why a lot of people get destroyed by the ball and tail. I mean, there is also the skill of getting used to animating overlap with shapes, but that's what this is designed to help get you used to, get you set up to win. Might be a little fast for the tail. Like, you could also kind of translate the tail, the tip of the tail, in worst case scenario if you have to, right at the end. So that should be okay. I think that'll be off camera, but we'll check. So pretty fluid through here. There's still rough bits. We're pretty close to where we need to be. Stuff just takes a little bit of time. This is too quick. That's a really big jump, and just in terms of shape over one frame. So I just got to make sure I bring this back in line, and maybe don't flip it over so quickly here. Right. Okay, let's get this opening one sorted better. Drag. If you need to, you could translate this. Just make sure you're not really throwing off your arcs and your spacing, because it can easily do that, right? Now, the reason why I'm kind of going to that here is just we're pretty much keying every single frame for some of these turns here. So, you know, I'm really manually controlling all this rather than letting Maya animate it for me. And then here, yeah, here it gets out of whack. Definitely need a keyframe in here. Kind of shape this kind of like our drawing, and it's just a bit longer. And then I'm looking back at that last frame and seeing how this arcs, comes up, comes down, and then, oh, it's a big change there. Probably bring that back up. Try to calm that down some. Maybe I could pull this down more. This is the game you start playing where you know, you try to make it just a little bit smoother. You're like, maybe I could bring this down more so the tail tip drops a little bit up here. That it covers a little bit more ground coming down, and then this hooks up a little bit better, right? That's the artistic game you start playing, and that's how you're going to get to smoother and smoother tail overlap, and how you're going to get better and better at it, and then you'll be legendary because you did all of that extra hustle, that extra blood, sweat, and tears here to get this thing fluid. And then normal people will just watch your animation and think, yeah, you just hit the animate button, right? That's all you had to do. You brought the character in, hit the button, done. Computer did the work for you. Boom, 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 boom. And now we look at the main camera view. turn the curves off. Yeah, it has a nice flow to it. I'm not really bugged by anything like super poppy in there with the tail. It doesn't feel like it gets too busy. Yeah, like, and I like the kind of skid that he does as he lands and takes off. Fun little thing to do, right? I don't know, there's something about doing overlap a tail and having an energetic character like this that's a lot of fun. I like having the extra frames at the end too to kind of feel like he left. But if I was going to adjust anything more here, just to kind of keep the simple idea, it would be to give us a, have him actually be off screen here at the end, have a few frames where there's nothing here, and then we see a ball kind of appear, see the squirrel hop in, right? That would be a really quick fix. We would just like grab all of our curves, slide things over for a little bit of time. So we have a little bit of time at the end, a little bit of time in the beginning, and then we add a little bit of animation of this guy coming in and maybe lifting up to this high point that it is now, and then it's in there. We don't do that really fast because I'm animating and I can't stop. Just gonna grab everything here, slide this over for a couple of frames, and then here have him off screen. If he's linear, kind of maintaining speed, then he's back all the way there. And then he's only popping in there. He's going to be rising up. So he won't be as high. He'll be rising up probably quickly. Here, and then on this frame, he'll be low. Right? So, boing. Now he's popping in the frame. We don't even need to really worry about the tail there because we don't see it in the main camera. And now it feels like he leaves and then enters. And if we cut a few frames from the end, then it'd feel almost like he's gone the same amount of time that it takes for him to come back. Boing. Almost feels like, yeah, it just feels like a loop, like a visual loop, right? He's like gone and then he's back again.
The CNS curves that you just discovered in this animation by practicing, following along, you know, this way of overlapping through shape rather than offsetting, so you have a lot of control. This is a workflow hack so that you can quickly get overlap built for anything. An arm, a leg, you know, a spine, absolutely a hat, hair, tail, ear, wings, anything. And this is going to save you, I can't stress this enough, this is going to save you thousands of animating hours, thousands of hours of stress in your animation career. Especially since nothing in real life, no piece of an object or body part, you know, moves at the same exact time. Everything is broken up. So if you get good at this squirrel at this level, you're going to be prepping yourself to crush it when you're kung fu fighting or animating pantomime. Now click or tap the screen to keep the animations coming, and I'll see you in the next animation challenge. Happy animating.